Hey, if the idea of sinking funds gives you a sinking feeling or you don't know what they are in the first place, then let's clear up that confusion and give you some workable solutions. Almost 34 years ago, we get married, we start spending money, we're not tracking the money. We're realizing that whenever anything comes up that really shouldn't be a surprise to us, that we are panicking. You know, things like Christmas, which does occur every year.
On December 25th.
Yes, and clearly should not have been something that took us by surprise. So we found the perfect solution for us was sinking funds, and we think you are also going to find them helpful.
Hey, if this is the first time you've joined us, I'm Larry.
And I'm Hope.
And we're from Under the Median.
And every week on this channel, we talk about practical frugality. So if you'd like to learn more with us, make sure you're subscribed and you hit the bell notification button. Hey, if the whole idea of sinking funds is kind of an enigma to you and you don't really know exactly what they are, or you've heard of them and you don't know how to use them in your budget, we're going to clear up all that confusion for you in this program. We'll define sinking funds, give you some very specific examples. We'll show you what our sinking funds are in our 2022 budget. And then we're going to help those of you who were like us. You are living paycheck to paycheck like 70% of Americans do every single month. And you just feel like maybe you don't even have room in your budget for sinking funds. Well, we were in those shoes for a really, really long time, raising 4 boys on a less than average income. So we are going to show you our step-by-step process that we used every single year when we set up our sinking funds. And you know what? The process really, really works. So stick with us to the end of the program.
But first, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, John Creekmer of Creekmer Wealth Advisors.
John Creekmer was the first person that introduced us to the idea of thinking of sinking funds in the form of buckets. Buckets that you fill up and then you determine how you pour out of the bucket. Did you pour it out all at once, or do you pour it out a little bit at a time? It's something that really resonated with us, and we still use this concept every single year when we do our budget. Now, if you need common sense, down-to-earth, practical advice on budgeting, retirement, or investment, then John is your guy. Creekmore Wealth Advisors, there's a link, guys, in the description of the video. When you contact him, be sure to tell him that Hope and Larry sent you.
And one thing nice about the Creekmer Wealth Advisory team is that they'll get you set up to your own personal needs as far as how you can invest your finances, set up some of your buckets, as we're going to talk about today, and make your money work for you.
All right, let's talk about buckets. What the heck do buckets have to do with sinking funds? First, let's define what we're talking about. What is a sinking fund?
Well, a sinking fund is a budgetary amount that you set up within your total budget. So you have items in each of these categories that you're going to fill up, usually at the beginning of each year. They'll be full, and then you're going to empty them down throughout the year. And you set them up according to planned budgetary items, known items that you're going to have to spend your money on.
Now, for instance, we should have known that December 25th would bring with it Christmas, and we should have some money set aside to pay for Christmas expenses. Now, here's the difference between sinking funds and your emergency fund. They actually are very much not the same thing.
Well, yeah, obviously, an emergency fund is an unplanned expense. That's something that happens suddenly, unexpectedly. For instance, a tree fell in our front yard. That was unexpected.
Very unexpected.
We had not planned any money toward the cleanup of that tree. Anything that happens in your life that's an emergency or unplanned, that goes into a separate category. A sinking fund would be things like your car insurance, your home insurance, your home taxes, maybe your health needs, whatever you know throughout the year that you're going to need money for. Clothing, for instance, educational expenses. Those are items you can plan for.
Now, Larry just gave you some really great examples, but we really want to challenge you to think of sinking funds in terms of 2 different categories of sinking funds. The first kind of sinking fund are for expenses that you are going to fill your bucket up, and then you are going to empty that bucket all at once, all at one time.
A good example of that would be your home taxes. If you own your own home, every year you have to pay your real estate taxes. And that's an amount that you have to have ready and available at the time that they send you out that bill. We get ours in May. So we make sure that bucket is filled up at the beginning of the year, and we're ready to pay that and pour the whole bucket out on that when it comes due.
Now, the thing with that is as soon as that bucket is empty, it comes right back up again and is empty, and we are going to start to fill it back up again. So that sort of sinking fund doesn't change very much over time. The only way that that would change would be if they increase our taxes, which of course we all know about.
They would never do that.
We all know about the rainwater tax we just talked about a week ago in the program. We'll leave a link to that program in the description of this video. We talked all about our unexpected rainwater tax and how they are taxing us on the water that falls on our property. So that did indeed increase that budget category. However, for the most part, the only way that that's actually going to go down would be if you sold your home and moved to a different home. It's sort of the same idea that you would save up all year and then pay your car insurance all at once. That car insurance, can it go down? It might, but only if you shop around and you get cheaper rates. So really, when you have a sinking fund that you're going to empty the whole bucket, usually those expenses, you kind of know about how much it's going to be, and it's not going to change very much from year to year. But there is another kind of sinking fund, and you have much more control over this kind of sinking fund and the size of your bucket.
So the second category of sinking funds are irregular funds. Now, these are funds that you're going to just take a little bit out at a time. You're not going to dump the whole bucket. That would be like an item of clothing. You have a clothing budget set up. You set the amount at the beginning of the year. And so you want to buy a shirt or a pair of slacks or a pair of shoes, whatever you need. That just gets deducted off of that. Obviously, you're not throwing the whole bucket at it. You're just taking a small amount out. And I think most of the categories work this way. You just take a little bit out as needed.
Now remember, sinking fund is just a way of designating how you're going to use a specific budget category. It's like a tag you put on it that says, this is our clothing budget, and it is designated as a sinking fund. You want some more real life examples? Let's take a look at what Larry and I have designated for our 2022 sinking funds.
So in our 2022 sinking funds, we actually have 14 categories.
I can't even do that with one hand. I'll have to do 10 and 4. There you
Yeah, that is a lot of categories. But once again, this helps us to organize our budget into a way that we know exactly what we're doing and we can track them. So the first one is vacation.
Sorry, it's all the way at the top.
I don't think that's prioritized, but it is vacation. The next one is Christmas. We have a certain amount we allocate each year for Christmas. Clothing, the same thing. So school supplies, car upkeep, home maintenance, gifts, fun, and that would also include eating out.
We include that together. You can include like recreation and then subcategories eating out. That's fine. We don't do that. You know why? Because we hardly ever go out to eat. So for us, you know, we would rather put it all together in one category and spend some of that money on something fun like going out to a concert.
Then we'd have your car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, home furnishings, books, and of course, house taxes.
Now, are we telling you these are the sinking funds that you have to have? No. Almost any category in your budget can be designated as a sinking fund. All that means is that you're tracking how much you are putting in that bucket every single month, so you're very well aware of when that bucket is full, and more importantly, almost when that bucket is half empty.
You know, we used to have a dog, so we had a sinking fund for Shelby, and that would include how much food we needed to buy her for each year and maybe some medical expenses, the rabies shots, all that was figured in, so we had a budget category set up for her.
Tell us some of your sinking funds in the comments section. Do you have different sinking funds than we do? We'd love to hear ideas of what your sinking funds are for 2022.
We're going to take some questions that we've gotten from some of you viewers about sinking funds. But first, let's talk about the advantages of sinking funds.
Why do we even really like these things, and why are we recommend that you consider putting them in your budget? Well, one of them is that it allows you to prioritize your savings and prioritize your spending. It's a really, really great tool for that. It also allows you to stop panicking when surprises hit, like Christmas.
A sinking fund account will help you to determine your true savings so that your savings account doesn't look like one big pile of green cash.
We made that mistake very, very early in our marriage. When you have sinking fund accounts and they are in your savings account, then it really helps to be able to know that part of that money, you're not able to spend it because it already has a different designated purpose. Now, if you're wondering where in the world you're supposed to even keep these sinking funds, stick with us because that's one of the questions we're going to answer in just a couple of minutes. A couple more reasons why we really, really like sinking funds. It allows you to track your progress toward making that budgetary goal. So you always know exactly how much money is in that bucket, how full it is, and how much more you need to put in it to reach the top.
A sinking fund is also a form of accountability. It helps keeping you from just spending wildly in a certain area. Now you've got it kind of locked down. It's like putting a harness on a horse so the horse doesn't just run away wild. It keeps your budget under control.
Once you have designated in writing, I'm going to spend no more than $500 this year on clothing, there's something that happens honestly in your brain where your brain registers that $500, especially if you're tracking it, guys, every single month. And you know you're not going to take money from any other budget category. Once the $500 is gone, it's gone. It helps you prioritize what kind of clothing you are buying, and maybe you're going to pass on the Coach purse, but you're going to buy something else. It really, really helps as a method of controlling your spending. And those are the reasons why we love sinking funds so much. Now, we have had some viewers who have written and asked us a number of questions about sinking funds. Maybe you have some of the same questions, so we're going to answer them right now.
And let us say, too, if you have additional questions that we don't address, please put them in the comment field. We'll address those in a later program. Do sinking funds ever go away?
What a great question. Sinking funds cease when the need for the sinking fund ceases. We'll give you a great example. We've home educated our children for 22 years. So our youngest son is a freshman this year, which means in 3 more years he'll graduate. And that money that is in a sinking fund every year to take care of buying curriculum, books, anything he needs for educational purposes, to pay for extra classes he wants to take, that need will no longer exist. So that sinking fund will also go away, and that money will then be available for us to either set a new goal or absorb it into one of our other sinking funds. Next question is, Claire wrote, and she wants to know, so what happens when you use money from a sinking fund? She gave a great example. She said, I have $1,200 in my home maintenance fund. I spend $400. Do I need then to put $400 back into it immediately to get it back up to $1,200? How do I deal with that?
Well, we set these up on an annual basis. So when we set the amount of a sinking fund, we need that fund to last for 12 months. So if you use $400 on a $1,200 budget, I wouldn't worry about filling that up right away. However, if the reverse is true, if you use $800 and you only have $400 left, then you need to do something different.
Well, especially if it's February. Claire, I love this question because what it does is it reminds us that you're going to watch that amount that is available in the bucket slowly go down over time. That is expected. But if you have $1,200 and you all of a sudden have to spend $1,000 of it, let's say, you got $200 left, it's the middle of February, then you probably don't have enough money in there. This just happened to us literally 2 weeks ago. So we have about $1,000 set aside every year in a sinking fund for just general car repairs. Well, the brakes went out unexpectedly on our vehicle, and it cost $900 for all 4 brake pads. I can't remember if they had rotors.
Yeah, it
was the whole kit and caboodle, guys.
Yeah.
Now, I did ask, and I did receive a 10% discount, so never be afraid to ask if they will discount a bill by 10% or so. But it's still almost completely drained that sinking fund. So we know, here's the bucket. The amount left in it is like that much down the bottom. So we're going to throw some more money in it. But what we're probably going to do, rather than trying to refinagle the budget even this early in the year, we're going to use some overtime, any windfall money that comes our way, any extra additional money that comes in that we were not expecting. We're going to put it back in that bucket until that bucket is filled back up to the top, because you can't go like on $160 of car repair possibilities for the rest of 2022.
Another thing that you might consider, if you have to throw a major amount of money that's pretty much going to empty that bucket at the beginning of your year, you might consider that to come out of an emergency fund rather than out of your sinking fund, because that would be considered an unexpected expense.
Now, here's the caveat, guys. Almost all of the funds that we've talked about, they're not unexpected expenses. So buying that Gucci bag, do not pull money out of your emergency fund to pay for that. We're talking about something that is a true unexpected emergency, and a car repair could very well fit under that category and could be taken out of your emergency fund. The next question, this came from several viewers who said, all right, I get the sinking funds. I understand that concept. But what I don't understand is, once I've got the bucket full, where am I supposed to keep the bucket and the contents of the bucket?
Well, there's so many different ways that you can do this, and there isn't really a single right answer, but I think you have to use some common sense. So you can use the envelope system. That's recommended for groceries, maybe for clothing. I would say that would work for smaller amounts of money if you want to use that system. But if you have a large item that you're putting into your sinking fund. Like if you want to replace your car with a vehicle that costs $20,000, obviously you don't want to put that into an envelope. You want to keep that in a bank account or a credit union account, and you want to track that using another system.
Now, we actually keep nearly all of our sinking funds in our credit union with our main account. And then we track them and how much we take out of them every single month using Dave Ramsey's free budgeting online tool, Every Dollar. So we just keep them in there and track them on paper. If you want to track them separately and have separate accounts, that's perfectly fine to do. If you have a credit union or a bank that allows you to have a lot of sub accounts, I know a lady that did this. She had 17 accounts. She had 17 sinking funds. She tracked them all. They were all interrelated, so she could move money back and forth if she needed to, but it worked absolutely perfectly for her. So the whole idea is do what works for you, but make sure you know where the bucket is and you know what's in the bucket.
That's right. That's right. The next question is, we are a low-income family. How do we set sinking funds when we know we can't afford to fund them at all?
I loved this question, and y'all can probably figure out why, because we were in this very position for many, many years raising our children. So get your notebook ready, get your pen and paper out, because we're going to tell you exactly, step by step, exactly what we did to set our sinking funds every single year. All right, step one.
Step one is write out every sinking fund that you would have in an ideal world.
And the list should be, guess what, guys? Prioritized. You know, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, prioritized is one of my favorite words in the whole world. Why? Because any list that you make, including that of a sinking fund list, needs to be prioritized, meaning the things that are most important to you, things that are most critical for you, must appear at the top of that list. Why? Because when your brain looks at any list, it goes straight to the top, and the things that are at the top are given more importance than the things that are toward the bottom. So make sure when you write out your wish list, the important things are at the top, and those things which maybe you got a little more give on, those items are going to be toward the bottom of the list.
Yeah, so your top items will be what I would call your non-negotiables, and your bottom items, those are going to be a little bit more fluid. You can work with those, make adjustments, and that'll kind of help you set all the categories up to make them work within your budget. After you've got your list figured out, set a realistic amount for each fund. The best way to do that is look at your last year's expenditures. How much did you spend on each one of those last year? That will help you to set realistic amounts for this year.
Now, if you're looking at your list already and thinking, there is no way I'm going to be able to fund them all, do not panic. We're going to show you exactly how to make some adjustments in those fund categories in order to get as many as possible into your budget for 2022.
What you want to do is just put a star next to the items that cannot be cut, things that you know you have to pay, like your property taxes. Yep. Those can't be cut. So those are your non-negotiables.
Can't be moved, can't be reduced. Those items, just put a little asterisk or a little star right next to it so that you can see that as you're going through your list. Then grab a yellow highlighter. I love to do this. Any item that you think, I bet that I could lower that category a little bit, highlight it in yellow. The next step you're going to take is what we love to call the 10% exercise. You set a timer for 20 minutes and you're going to work together and come up with a list of ways that you think you could reduce each of those sinking fund categories that you have highlighted in yellow. You will be amazed in just 20 minutes of concerted effort how many ways you'll be able to come up with that you possibly could reduce those categories. Remember, that magic number you're looking at is 10%. If you can reduce it more than that, that is gold, but try for at least 10%.
Yeah, cut as many funds down to the minimum that you can. And some of these might be your Christmas fund, your gift list. It might even be your clothing fund. Yep. You know, we buy a lot of used clothing, and that does cut our expenses down. Frankly, I don't replace clothing unless I got a hole in the shirt or something. I'll wear stuff for 15, 20 years. That doesn't mean you have to, but that's what we do to kind of help keep those categories under control.
He only wears it for 20 years if I have not found it and hidden it from him. I'm just gonna say.
I have a jacket from 1978 that I still wear.
It's so sad.
Now take a critical look at that list. The ones that are highlighted in yellow that Hope talked about, can you eliminate those?
Let us give you a really great example. You know that we talked about the fact that we had to repair our car, and that came out of our car repair fund. Some people actually don't have a car repair fund, and we didn't for years. When we were raising the kids, there literally was no money available in the budget to have a sinking fund deliberately dedicated to car repairs. We had an emergency fund, and we knew if something happened to one of the cars, we were going to have to take that money out of the emergency fund. That is a perfectly legit choice to make. So look at some of those other funds and say, do I really need to have these? Can these be taken care of in some other fashion using what is already present in my budget? Other than that, our advice is look hard at it and cut it down to the bare bones. It's okay to do that.
So after you're done working through this whole list, kind of shaking it down, you need to add up all of the amounts and see if it will work within your income bracket.
If it doesn't, you need to go back through the list one more time, see if you can shake it down a little more. You may either need to eliminate some more categories, or you may need to bring in some extra income. And whenever any extra income comes in, use that income in order to fund those sinking fund categories. Now, when you're all finished and the numbers add up, you should have a fully prioritized working sinking fund budget, and it should work no matter what income you have. Hey, another shout out in here for the sponsor of today's program, Creekmer Wealth Advisors. And thanks to John Creekmer for giving us the original idea of using the bucket strategy for sinking funds. Now, if you feel like, okay, I get it now. I am ready to get started, but I am starting from zero. My buckets are completely empty. We have solutions for you. There are actually 3 specific strategies that we have personally used in order to fund our sinking fund categories. All 3 of them work. We did a video about it. That video is the next thing you should watch. It is right over there.